There's a strange contradiction at the heart of intelligence. The smarter you are, the easier it is to look as if you should be ahead of everyone else. You learn quickly, see patterns early, and understand complexity with unusual ease. From the outside, that should lead to momentum. But in real life, many intelligent people do not move faster. Some simply become better at standing still in sophisticated ways. What makes this painful is that the problem is rarely obvious. It does not look like failure at first. It looks like preparation, discernment, high standards, and potential. Until years pass and potential begins to feel heavier than progress. So if intelligence is such a gift, why does it so often turn into friction, hesitation, and a life that never fully begins? Highly intelligent people rarely lose because they do not know what to do. More often, they suffer because they know too much too soon. They can see several roads at once. They notice the strengths and weaknesses of each option, the hidden cost of every decision, the flaw in every unfinished idea. And on the surface, that sounds like an advantage. But when the mind can see too many possibilities at the same time, it can quietly lose the one thing that movement actually depends on: the willingness to take a clear, imperfect step. There are people who are not incapable at all, yet they live in a state that feels strangely stuck. They read a great deal. They think deeply. They prepare carefully. They fill notebooks, save articles, refine plans, reorganize goals, and spend long stretches of time trying to make sense of the best possible route forward. From the outside, it may look like seriousness. It may even look admirable. But underneath, it is often a very elegant form of delay. Intelligent people rarely procrastinate in a crude or obvious way. They do not always say, "I'm afraid." Instead, they say they need more clarity, more information, a little more time, a stronger structure, a better strategy, a more complete understanding before they begin. And because these reasons sound reasonable, even noble, they can live inside them for a very long time without admitting what is really happening. Days pass, then months, sometimes years. And all the while, the mind feels active, yet real life barely moves. This is one of the quiet tragedies of being bright. The faster you understand what something could become, the harder it can be to tolerate what it must look like at the beginning. Because you can already see the refined version in your head. The first version feels unbearably small, too rough, too ordinary, too disappointing. It does not match the standard you can already imagine, so you hesitate to make it real at all. That is where the second trap begins. Intelligent people often tie their sense of worth to being right. From an early age, many of them are praised for being sharp, capable, promising, gifted. They become used to being the one who understands quickly, the one who has something. And over time, that praise can turn into an identity. It no longer feels like a compliment. It feels like a role that must be protected. So action stops being a simple experiment. It becomes a test. If the result is poor, it does not merely mean the work needs improving. It starts to feel as if something more personal has been exposed, as if the image they have of themselves is cracked in public. That is why some intelligent people do not fear failure in the ordinary sense. What they fear is the emotional wound of no longer feeling exceptional. They fear producing something average. They fear discovering that effort does not instantly translate into excellence. They fear the humiliation of being a beginner in full view of their own standards. Another person may call this part of learning, but to someone who has lived for years inside the identity of being clever, every mistake can feel heavier than it should. not because the mistake is truly catastrophic, but because it seems to threaten the story they have been telling themselves about who they are. So they begin to choose places where the ego can remain safer. They would rather discuss ideas than release imperfect work. They would rather research than publish a first attempt. They would rather imagine something brilliant than sit beside something real and unfinished. They would rather preserve potential than let reality touch it and reveal its limits. And this is where the trap becomes especially cruel. It creates the illusion of depth without the reality of movement. A person can spend years looking thoughtful, insightful, full of promise, whilst producing very little that life can actually build upon. They are not lazy in the usual sense. They are often mentally exhausted. They are carrying the weight of too many possibilities, too many internal standards, too much self-consciousness around every step. The failure of intelligent people is rarely loud. It does not always arrive as disaster. More often it arrives as drift. Projects started and abandoned, plans revised but never lived. Moments of excitement followed by long stillness, a great deal understood, but very little embodied. They stay busy inside their own minds, and because the inner world feels so active, it can take a painfully long time to notice that the outer world has barely changed. What makes this worse is that they usually know it. They know they are overthinking. They know they are delaying. They know they are complicating what could have been simple. And because they understand themselves so well, they often judge themselves with unusual precision. They are not only disappointed, they are ashamed of being disappointed in a pattern they can already explain. Then the cycle tightens. You see an opportunity. Your mind immediately imagines the best version of it. Almost at the same moment, it also imagines what could go wrong. The tension rises. You do not want to move with something fragile or incomplete, so you step back to prepare. Then, after preparing, you notice further gaps, so you step back again. Whilst you are still refining the conditions for a perfect start, someone else has already begun. They are clumsy. They make errors. They adjust as they go. They are not as conceptually brilliant, perhaps, but they are willing to be visibly unfinished. And because of that, they start building a life whilst you are still trying to design one. This is a difficult truth, but an important one. Life does not reward people simply for seeing deeply. It rewards people who can turn what they see into a rhythm of action. You may be more intelligent, more perceptive, more nuanced than those around you. But if most of that intelligence is being used to protect your self-image, anticipate disappointment, and avoid imperfect exposure, then your intelligence is serving stagnation rather than growth. Many intelligent people live with an unspoken belief that one day, once they are ready enough, they will begin properly. Once they feel more certain, more composed, more impressive, more in control, everything will finally flow. But real life does not work that way. You do not act because confidence arrives first. Confidence often arrives because action has been repeated enough times to make fear less convincing. You do not become skilled and then begin. You begin badly at times, and skill slowly forms around the practice. The mind can understand this and still resist it. That is a strange thing. A person may speak beautifully about process, discipline, patience, failure, and learning. They may even give excellent advice to others, but when it is their own turn to be ordinary, they recoil. When it is their own work that looks small, they hesitate. When it is their own voice that sounds uncertain, something inside them whispers, surely someone like me should be better than this. that whisper is often enough to kill momentum before it has any real chance to mature. So escaping this trap does not begin with forcing yourself to do more in a frantic way. It begins with telling the truth. Perhaps you are not only afraid of failure, perhaps you are afraid of feeling unremarkable, afraid that if your first attempt looks ordinary, then maybe you are ordinary too. Afraid that if you cannot be impressive immediately, then the identity you have leaned on for years may not protect you anymore. If you cannot name that fear, you'll keep disguising it as perfectionism. You'll call it standards, taste, discernment, quality control. And sometimes those things are real. But sometimes what looks like high standards is simply the ego refusing to survive the humility of a beginning. The ego prefers a beautiful future to a messy present. It prefers promise to repetition. It prefers the fantasy of brilliance to the discipline of practice. It prefers being seen as someone who could do something remarkable rather than becoming someone who quietly does small things well for a very long time. And that is precisely where a different way of living begins. Maybe the problem was never that you were not intelligent enough. Maybe the problem is that you have been using intelligence as armor to foresee risk, to avoid embarrassment, to stay one step removed from the vulnerability of making something real, to remain the one who understands rather than the one who is willing to be changed by contact with reality. But armor worn for too long eventually becomes a prison. You do not need to become less intelligent in order to move. You only need to stop using intelligence against yourself. You do not need to become less thoughtful. You only need to stop demanding that every first step should reflect your deepest potential. No meaningful life is built that way. People who go far are not always the ones who shine most. Brightly at the beginning, very often they are simply the ones who can bear the boredom, the awkwardness, and the humility of doing the right thing repeatedly before it looks impressive. For intelligent people, this may be one of the hardest lessons of all. Lower the standard of the first step without lowering your sense of worth. Those are not the same thing. An awkward draft does not mean you are shallow. A weak first attempt does not mean you are talentless. A slow project does not mean your potential has vanished. It only means you are standing where all genuine growth begins, in the part that is not glamorous, not graceful, not yet rewarded, but honest. Sometimes the biggest turning point does not come from a grand idea. It comes from choosing one small thing and finishing it, closing a few doors, letting go of the intoxication of endless possibility, stopping the question, what is the perfect path for someone like me? And replacing it with a quieter, more useful one. What is one good thing I can keep doing for long enough that it starts to change me? Because sustainable success is not built on the days when you feel exceptional. It is built on ordinary days, when you still continue without the emotional drama of brilliance. Going far does not always begin with an explosion of motivation. Sometimes it begins with a humble decision. Today, I will do the small, real thing in front of me without waiting to become the ideal version of myself first. Intelligent people often want to see the whole map before they move, but some roads only reveal themselves once you are already walking. Some answers do not exist in thought alone. They appear in motion. Some fears cannot be reasoned into disappearance. They can only be outlived through actions small enough to stop the mind from escaping again. And after a while, a quieter truth begins to settle in. What was meant to carry you was never your ability to understand quickly. It was your willingness to live simply enough for your understanding to become practice, to stop performing sharpness in every moment, to accept that there will be seasons when you are slow, uncertain, unpolished, and still entirely worthy of continuing, to stop being a person of potential and become a person of rhythm. In the end, life does not ask how many subtle thoughts you are capable of having. It asks what you built from what you understood. It does not ask who you might have been in theory. It asks how faithfully you stayed with the imperfect reality of becoming. So if you recognize yourself in this, perhaps you are not lazy at all. Perhaps you are not lacking ability. Perhaps you have simply lived too long in an inner room where everything had to be clever, convincing, and worthy of the word gifted. And perhaps it is time to walk out of that room, not dramatically, not all at once, just enough to choose one real thing, do it today, return to it tomorrow, and let your intelligence become what it was always meant to be. Not a hiding place for fear, but a tool for walking further than fear would ever let you go. Because the highest places in life do not always belong to the most complicated minds. Very often they belong to the people who learn early enough how to simplify what matters and repeat it long enough to let it grow. And perhaps the success you've been searching for is not waiting for you on the far side of some dramatic leap. Perhaps it has been waiting quietly behind the small steps you kept dismissing as beneath your potential. Because in the end, the ones who go far are not always the ones who shine the most, but the ones who keep moving through their unfinished selves again and again. And if you'd like to keep exploring those inner places with me, Mind Psypher will be here.